Welcome.
Property Express, organizers of Ghana Property Awards in Ghana and the UK, respectively, have selected some few companies in the building and construction industry in the country who have made massive inroads in the industry, focusing on good maintenance and sustainability of their projects. One of such companies is GOLDKEY Properties Limited, with their offices here in Cantonment, Accra, and I'm with the project manager, Alex Dordor. Alice.
Hello, Eric. I'm doing well.
Good. I'm doing brilliant. Well, Alex, I got some few questions to ask you concerning, how you managed to stay on top of your projects, clients patronizing it here and there. And what's the secret behind it? Give me some ideas. Can you please elaborate how sustainable PwC Tower building is and the benefits its occupants should expect?
Okay. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, evening, or morning to your viewers.
That's it.
GOLDKEY Properties Limited, we are a brand for the future.
Right.
So in every design, we try to design with the future in mind.
Right.
And by designing with the future in mind, it means that you are looking at sustainability. Basically, sustainability is leveraging on today's resources with future generations in mind. So you don't deprive future generations of the resources that you have today through your activities.
Right.
You make sure that though you are actively utilizing the resources today, you are not destroying the potential for future generations to have access to these resources. That's basically sustainability.
Right.
So our mindset in terms of design is such that our designs are futuristic. By futuristic, we design green. We design sustainable buildings.
Good.
And I believe that that's how we've remained relevant in the industry over the period. Now, to the specific question of the PwC Tower. The concept of green building in Ghana, I think it's now that it's taking shape and it's having a lot of traction. But in the West and other developed countries, it's being pushed strongly. Now, PwC, we had in mind designing and building a green building edifice. By that, I mean the building had to be energy self-sufficient or consume little amount of energy.
Right.
The dissipation of greenhouse gases during the construction and during occupation and utilization has to be minimized, and as well as the water, the materials we use, the overhead costs of running electricity and all that.
Hold on there. That brings me to the next question. That the building industry is rapidly developing new technologies to manage emissions and improve energy efficiency and water management, while also lowering operational costs.
Yes.
Can you share with us how PwC Tower sustainable building impact on operational costs and maintenance as compared to the traditional ones?
Thank you. So primarily, the PwC building was designed with energy efficiency in mind.
Right.
By energy efficiency, the design took into account things that we would do that will help reduce the overall energy consumption of the building during operation and even during construction. So in that building, you have almost all the luminaries or lighting fixtures being LED. LED consumes lesser as compared to the traditional
lighting,
lighting systems. You also have segmentation of spaces.
Right.
So for some spaces that you rarely pass, for instance, the corridors,
right,
you have what we call motion sensors installed there. So it is only when there is somebody present in that location that the lights come on.
Okay.
So you have energy being saved.
Right.
We also have...
That is especially in the corridors.
Especially in the corridors.
Right.
For workstations and offices, you have presence sensors. By the presence sensors, it means that so long as you are there, the lights are on.
The lights are on.
Once you move from that space and there's no one there, the lights automatically go off. So there's no...
Does it go off completely, or it dims?
It goes off.
Oh, okay.
It goes off.
Right.
So there's not a situation where no one is sitting in this room and the lights are on.
Okay.
No. So that's how energy is saved in the PwC building. So at the end of the month, the cost of electricity bills and all that are reduced as compared to the traditional way of doing things. The design itself, in terms of the electrical wiring systems, are also conscious of our desire to have the building being sustainable.
Okay.
So basically, on the side of electricity, that is it. When you come to water, the building actually, we have a rain harvesting system.
Wow.
We also have our the soil water going through a biodigester system where there is a filtration bed,
okay,
and then there is a treatment, and the water that's coming out is potable water for watering our lawns and all that. So that also helps us in conservation of water.
Right, so nothing goes to waste.
Nothing goes to waste. So energy is conserved, water is conserved. Even with the energy, look, I left this out. You see, we use a lot of open glass panes, which are transparent. And our buildings are designed such that we have a lot of natural lighting ingress. So apart from corridors, most of the office spaces and meeting rooms are on the facade locations. So you may not need light to even sit and work. Once you open your windows, you have enough light, and so you save on energy. If you go there, you also see that we have some small fins, horizontal fins that are sort of sun shading and prevent sun from coming in. All these are methods we use to conserve energy. We also know that when you use a lot of air conditioning, you use energy.
Yes.
And so what we do mostly is to use UV rated glasses. Our facades are designed such that you have argon gas between the double glazed facades, and so it reduces the amount of sunlight coming in with the heat. And so the amount of cooling levels required are lowered.
Minimized.
Yes.
Okay. That's quite interesting. Right. Okay. Now, kindly walk us through PwC resource efficiency and sustainable building as an astute, as a broad concept aiming to reduce resource use and limit the environmental impacts from buildings throughout their life cycle. Do you get this one? Throughout their life cycle?
Yes.
You said a lot about this, but this particular one is to reduce resource use and limit the environmental impacts from buildings throughout their life cycle.
Okay. So, as I was explaining earlier, the life cycle of the building from our point of view for it to be green actually starts from the construction phase.
Okay.
Now, even the selection of materials, the machinery being used, after completion, how the building is functioning, and then all forms part of the whole building life cycle. And normally, if you want a holistic view of cost of the project, you look at the life cycle costing. Now, what is different about the PwC building is that the material components used, for instance, in a traditional building, if you are doing slabs,
right,
you may be doing 250 to 300 thick slabs and use more concrete. And the more material you use, these materials are also produced elsewhere and emit CO2 gases into the environment. We in the PwC building, we use a system of slabbing called the waffle slab system. And this reduces the volume of concrete, the volume of steel bar that is used on the slabs. So it's a form of honeycomb slab system that you use lesser concrete. And the lesser concrete you use, the lesser emission into the environment you generate during construction and during the operations of the building. So you are actually safeguarding the environment.
The environment.
Yes. In terms of water, I believe I've spoken extensively.
You've spoken about the water already, yeah.
Yes, water. And then in terms of energy as well, I have spoken.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah.
So now you're actually talking more about the greenhouse gas emissions. That's what we were just talking about.
Precisely.
Okay. So from your Gold Properties, Gold Key Properties point of view, what role can the government and other key stakeholders play to step up their commitment to cutting carbon emissions by about 80%?
Fantastic. So I think that one, policy; two, incentivizing entities that are going into green buildings.
Green buildings, yep.
Three, maybe creating funds, availability of funds for such developers to leverage on. Because look, all we have is a limited geographical space. And if we don't start thinking green and thinking sustainability from today, we would destroy the environment ourselves. So government ought to come up with policies that will encourage more developers to go green, incentivize developers who are already making the efforts, and then possibly support, probably through funding, because the initial cost of going green or building green is quite high, and that's a deterrent to a lot of people.
But do you think the government, as you are saying, talking about funding, do you think they will come up with funding for such private companies wanting to go into this green building projects?
So the thing is that, you see, some multinational entities like the IFC,
right,
have ratings. If you want to go green and you approach them, if your designs are green, they are able to fund you.
Okay.
Sometimes you look at the social economy, and if government is minded to look into the future and not only look at today, then it should be an area where they should be willing to fund. Yes.
Yeah, I get you. Okay. Well, water, energy, or natural resources, they can, in many cases, have a positive impact on the environment, like you were saying earlier. Can you just walk us through a bit about PwC Tower's sustainable buildings protect biodiversity and ecosystems? You talked about it a while ago, but can you give me a little bit of elaboration on that, because that is more interesting.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
With respect to water, you know, before I got involved in green buildings, when you hear green buildings, you think of forests.
Yes, you're right.
But the concept of green building is actually preserving the environment and protecting as much as possible what is existing. So,
which is basically the greens.
Which is basically the greens, and then making sure that the activities or the introduction of that building in that space does not pollute the environment.
Create any harm to the environment.
The ecosystem. Yes. Now, the PwC building, as I said earlier on, is designed in such a way that we leverage on water recycling as much as we can. So we save water. We try to keep as much as possible the greenery around the building, and by so doing, we use the recycled water to maintain the lawns.
Like you said earlier on.
Like I said earlier on.
Yeah.
In addition to that, once you have some amount of greens around your building, which we planted after, even the amount of carbon
that
emission.
is after you've erected the building, you planted.
Yes, we planted some greens.
Okay.
And everybody knows that greens, the plants emit oxygen.
Oxygen, right.
And take in carbon dioxide.
Right.
So in our minds, the CO2 emissions from the building would actually be taken up by the plants that we try planting around the building.
Right.
And that's trying to balance the greenhouse gases in the environment.
So you go more deeply into these scientific aspects to make sure that whatever you're planning stays on top.
Yes, we do.
Wonderful. I love this. Good. Now, we want to know some of the materials that you use, like to keep these things, the building sustainable, you know, kind of the architecture in particular, and how it can help lower cost and lead to the long-time efficiency.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mentioned a few earlier on. If you went into the PwC tower now, you will see that apart from the structural elements, which are concrete and steel, most of the internal walls are all drywall partitions. By drywall partitions,
Well, what do you mean by drywall partitions? Yes.
I mean gypsum boards, plaster boards. You knock them, they are just like plaster. And you have double plaster boards. You have the structure, and then you have insulation between them. These insulation materials prevent heat transfer and also prevent noise transfer between offices and between the externals and the inside. And so within the building, some of these materials, you know, these materials are materials that don't emit CO2.
Okay.
Also, the production of these materials are environmentally friendly. They are produced in environmentally friendly environments. And so invariably, in the end, by incorporating these materials into the building, you are building sustainable. And that's what we have in the PwC building.
Oh, I see. Then you did a lot of research into this before doing the construction.
We did.
Okay.
And it actually has to start from the design phase.
Okay.
You don't build green from the building execution phase, because the design is what will tell you what to put where and how to put it. So in our design development phase, we would normally have design development meetings would have our softwares for calculating whether our buildings are meeting the green requirements in terms of water, in terms of energy, in terms of materials. So once the architect specifies a material, we input it into our system to see what ratings it will give us, whether it will pass or not. Once the MEP, the electrical people, specify something, we input it to see whether we are within the limits of being green. So
it's a lot of work.
It starts from the design phase.
A lot of work, and you need experts to do that. Wonderful. Now, from design to occupancy, a building entire life cycle needs to be carefully considered to make it sustainable for the long term. Does PwC Tower Green Buildings worth it in terms of durability? That is my last question to you.
Absolutely, and I think I preempted this question.
Yes, you did.
My last answer.
You did.
So, yes, from the design phase, we thought about it, and you would spend a little more, but the life cycle cost in terms of savings on your energy consumption, water consumption, even these two, you realize will net off.
Alone, yes,
will net off in the near future. A lot of people will say that for the gas emission is environmental. Yes, it's environmental, but we need to exist to occupy these buildings. And if we pollute our environment with this CO2 and other harmful gases, we will not even be there to occupy these buildings when they are built. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you too.
I think
my pleasure.
We learned a lot of lessons from this, and I'm sure our viewers too will be happy to learn what you just taught us.
Thank you.
Well, viewers, thank you so much for your attention, and we thank GOLDKEY Properties for being there for the developers and for those who want to occupy their buildings. Thank you so much.